Welcome to the 8th edition of World Intellectual Property Forum.
Good day to all of you, and very happy to be here as a part of the World Intellectual Property Forum, virtual global conference that is taking place in Singapore on 18th and 19th of December. My name is Parameshwar Iyer, and I am going to be sharing my presentation with you. The topic of my presentation is intellectual property rights, valuation of patents. I will go through these slides in the next 10 to 12 minutes, and I will share some experience and some insights I've gained as the former chairman of the Office of Intellectual Property and Technology Licensing at the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, from where I retired 2 years back. So when we look at a typical intellectual property filing process and the evaluation process in an academic institute, this slide shows you what happens as an inventor comes up with a new invention, right till the time that the patent on this is to be protected. So in our institute at the IIC, the inventor would typically file an invention disclosure form giving the details of the invention to the institute. There would be an evaluation committee, which I used to chair, that would meet and decide and recommend whether to go ahead with filing the patent for this particular invention. And the committee will also provide comments and affirmative actions on the invention in terms of any refinements or any amendments to be made. And finally, the Office of the Intellectual Property and Technology Licensing will provide instructions to the patent attorneys who will be filing the application. Okay. I'll give a couple of examples and then later some general ideas of the evaluation. So here is one example on the small synthetic RNA, a method of preparing the same and uses thereof. This was an invention by Professor Soumitra Das. It's got a patent in both India and US. It's alive in India, but it's lapsed in US. And the patent agency we used for this was a company called IPXL. We did market research on this to understand what is the scope for the intellectual property protection. We found there are over 180 million hepatitis C patients, and keep in mind that this is a invention for synthetic RNA, preparing and transferring the same and its use. There are 15 million hepatitis C patients in India, and there are a whole lot of medicines available: interferon, sofosbuvir, ledipavir, Viekira, and so on. Sofosbuvir, for instance, sells in the Indian market at roughly $900 for a 3-month course. That's a base price. So based on the researches we did between 2010 and 2015, we also found that the earning capacity of the target population or our customers, we have 880 million people earning less than 2 lakhs per year, and 370 million people earning about 2 lakhs or 200,000 per year. So based on various studies, we came to the conclusion that 70% of the HCV infection happens in poor and low middle class family. Access to medicine is only for about 35% of the population. And people infected by HCV capable of affording medicine are 150 million, but more than 100 million are not capable of affording it. So we arrived at a rough idea of about 5 million patients for this, and we took it as a cost of $900 per patient treatment medication. And we came to a total market revenue of about 4.5 billion US dollars. We assumed a market share of about 25% in the next 5 years, and 12.5% maybe initially. So we arrived at a figure of about 12.5 lakhs or 1.25 million people into $900 per treatment. And the total valuation we got was about $1.12 billion. Okay. And we looked at what were the direct costs for the treatment, cost comparable to RNA-based medication. 8% of the turnover is for material labor. Indirect costs were very high, at about 40% of the turnover, including marketing and R&D. And based on this, we arrived at a market valuation of about $1.12 billion for this particular invention. We also looked at the legal strength of the patent in terms of its position vis-a-vis how strong would be the specifications claims, what would be the patent term remaining, the breadth of the claim, geographical coverage, legal proceedings, monitoring against infringements. And we found that we were pretty weak as an institute in terms of ability to monitor infringements as well as our geographical coverage. We were also not so strong on legal position, but scientific status and enforcement means were pretty good. In terms of the technology strength of the patent, we looked at uniqueness of the technology. It wasn't that high, but depending on license agreements was there. Substitute technologies were low. Testing of the invention, we were capable. Marketing value was good. Production of infringing copyrights was also a little high. So we arrived at some comparable scores on how to look at the legal strength and the technology strength of the patent. And finally, we asked questions about the strategic strength of the patent, the correlation between patent and company business strategy, very high. Part of core technology areas, absolutely good. License sales agreement, we're still to go into, but we thought we'd have reasonable competency. Ensure freedom to operate was also high, and ability to win markets was good. So these gave us pretty good confident levels to look at the market conditions and the market strength of the patent. Knowledge of commercial opportunities, very good. Potential licensing revenues were good. Potential extra turnover from this was high, as well as the market growth rate was very good. Finally, the financial constraints, contribution to company profits would be very high. Future cost of development would also be favorable, but the real difficulties would be in financial capacity to cover renewal fees, investment intensity, and of course the cost of production was also reasonably good. The competitive strength of the patents, potential extra turnover very high, life expectancy was good, production of infringing copycat products was not so high, favorable. The weaknesses were in terms of legal proceedings, the ability to sue for infringements, the geographical coverage not too good to start with, and of course substitute technologies were also there. So we developed an opportunity risk matrix for this particular invention, where we plotted the risks on the y-axis from a 50% neutral to 0% low risk to 100% high risk, and the opportunities on the x-axis again from a low opportunity 0% on the left to medium opportunity 50% to high opportunity of 100%. And we found that our product lies somewhere in the slightly higher risk but a lower opportunity area, as shown by the blue circle here. So the financial details we worked out were as follows. The total potential market, as I mentioned earlier, 1.12 billion. Direct cost 8% of the turnover. Indirect cost were 40%, as I also mentioned. We looked at a 5-year lifetime and a 30% annual growth assumption, being a revolutionary medicine. We also assume the company today, without the patent technology, at about a $300 million valuation. We took a discounted rate of 25% based on assumptions based on higher risk premiums, as risk include validity of data, alternative approach, market acceptance, and so on. And we had a total projected growth rate in 5 years of 300%, which basically told us that the profits would be very good for the patented technology from the 3rd year onwards, and maybe right up to the 7th or 8th year. Business area profits without the patent technology are shown by the purple bars, okay, which are higher perhaps for the first couple of years, but then from the 3rd year, the business area profits with the patent technology are higher than the one without. So based on all this, we got down to calculating the net present value of the patent technology with a discounted factor of 25% as $453,463. And these are the assumptions, calculations, which we're showing here. I won't go into all the details, but this gives a really good idea that it would be worth patenting the technology, because after paying for all the costs, the revenues, the net present value of the revenues arising from the patent technology would be almost $500,000 more than all the expenses that would be incurred. That was one example. Now let me go to another example of an IP valuation we did with the wideband radio frequency ICD amplifier, internet communication amplifier. These are amplifiers that can strengthen electronic signals, volume in sound systems, radio signals in mobile phones, and they work over a very large frequency range. Radio frequency amplifier, RF amplifier, tuned amplifier that amplifies these high frequency signals used in radio communication. The frequency at which maximum gain occurs is made variable by changing the inductance or capacitance of the tuned circuit. Though these amplifiers are widely used, wideband radio frequency amplifiers, in industrial and defense application, they had to be imported hitherto as nobody was manufacturing them in our country. So a team of professors and scientists led by Professor Gaurav Banerjee of Electrical Communication at Indian Institute of Science looked at a unique selling proposition using a amplifier design that consumes 90% less power and occupies 50% less space than those that are imported. These were the real attractive propositions in terms of the invention that was carried out. The amplifier leverages the industry standard complementary metal oxide semiconductor CMOS technology, which is used to build complicated integrated circuits with hundreds of thousands of components. For example, microprocessor in your computer and the image sensor in your camera are all manufactured using CMOS. We did an analysis of the present state of art and the competitors and some key players with their revenue shared from the wideband amplifier technology. For instance, Agilent, a company in US, gets 36% of the revenue share from this technology. Avago, another US-based company, gets 54%, and NXP gets more than 2/3, 68% of the revenue share from a similar technology, which is a wideband distributed amplifier. We have used the following approaches for IP valuation of the wideband RF ICD technology. We assume that the market is going to discount everything. Price moves in trends. History tends to repeat itself. Rate of discount was calculated considering the past trend in data. Investment assumptions, all changes required according to market scenario are considered. And finally, revenues are projected keeping in mind the past revenues of the industry. In this case, this technology was to be transferred to the Bharat Electronics Industry, BEL, as well as product share, which uses this technology. So we took a market approach to this, account the value of the competitors and substitutes available. From an open market, we got the value of the substitute of this technology, a distributed amplifier, as I mentioned earlier. Its price was $2,300 or over 152,000 rupees per unit. The potential customer, as I mentioned earlier, is Bharat Electronics. And from the available market information, we noticed that this technology would be an incremental one. We did some future projections in order to come to a final valuation of the technology we have used. The following yardsticks: development cost, basic lab setup and development funds used for the product. And this came to almost 5 million rupees in terms of the sponsorship and the equipment cost. We assumed the unit price as about 50,000 rupees, which we thought that it should be 5 to 8 times less than the substitutes available in the market. And these substitutes were upwards of 400,000 or 250,000 to 400,000. So we got the market value of technology per product as a unit price into volume per year. 50,000 is the unit price, and we took a volume of 550,000 plus per year, and we got a pretty high number here, and it's almost 2.8 billion rupees based on the substitute price. The life cycle of the product is estimated to be 7 years, so that we can do the NPV, and these calculations were done. Very simple discounting at a compounding rate. The net cash inflow during a certain period is divided by the total amount of discounting done, which is 1 plus R to the power of T. R is the discount rate, T is the number of time periods, and we assumed a discount rate from past trend to be 13% for this particular calculation. I won't have time to go into all the details of the numbers here, but you can see that if we make a comparison of the cash flows across the next 7 years, in 2014-15, we would be putting in 500,000, revenues will be more, gross profit is 50,000, and the net present value is 50,000. Next year it improves and so on. By the time we come to the 7th year, the gross profits have crossed 16 billion rupees, and the net present value has now gone over 68 million rupees. And we did this gross profit using the amplifier, importing another amplifier, and the net benefit. Again, we found that over the years, especially towards the end of this life cycle of this technology, for instance, in 2022-23, the actual benefits are going to be over 52 million rupees from the commercialization of this wideband RF ICD amplifier. We also figured out some royalty rate, because the company that would invest, BL, would like to make a lump sum payment at the beginning and would like to have a profit sharing concept, because that gives the investor a return on sales of the final product. We did a manual royalty check for similar technologies and products. From that, we got a royalty rate somewhere between 6 to 7%. Financial situations of both parties, equal footing. Relevant industry transactions. We looked at similar technology for defense or for other highly competitive consumer electronics areas, and we found that it would be a near monopoly. And non-monetary compensation, we said there were no grand banks or no technology traders. So what are the conclusions? By calculating the NPV and market value for substitutes, we came to a conclusion that the value of our technology is in the brackets of 300 crores, which is 3,000 million or 3 billion rupees, to 350 crores, which is 3.5 billion rupees. And our royalty assessment quotes the royalty rate of 7%. Well, I've given you two examples, and I hope you got the trend of how we went about the evaluations of these two intellectual properties from the Indians of Science. And let me conclude by saying that intellectual property is an invaluable asset to any organization, especially to research, development, and academic institutions. Much of the research and development taken up by academic institutes actually goes undervalued, especially in countries like India, or undervalued at best. So this presentation has highlighted two typical examples of research and development at the Indians of Science, and how we have tried to capture the commercial or business value of these technologies. The first one was a synthetic RNA, and the second one was a wideband RF ICD amplifier. Through different innovative and pioneering efforts, we have proven that it is possible, indeed desirable, to capture the economic values of all innovations for social good of the institute and the nation. That's my presentation. I'm very happy to have been able to share it with you, and I'll be very happy to get a feedback on my presentation. My email and contact details are there, and I will also be present during the conference on the day the presentation is scheduled, so that if there are any live feedback or live questions, I'll be happy to answer these questions. Thank you very much for this opportunity for me to present the work that I've done in terms of valuation of intellectual property at the Indian Institute of Science. Thank you. Bye.